Marketing, meet finance. Finance, meet marketing. Today, we are going to geek out a little bit about business and how marketing and finance work together. And I am joined by the fabulous Sunil Purba. Hello, Sunil.
Hey, Lindsay, how are you?
Nod. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Very well. I'm happy to be here.
So, I'd like to consider myself an expert in marketing, and you're an expert in finance.
Yes. Yep.
But you
I like to-
also have a background in marketing as well.
I do, yeah. So for 6 years, was CEO of a company called The Invisible Orthodontist. And our role was working with orthodontic practices, so small, medium businesses on the smaller end. And what we did was we provided marketing services. So we did all aspects of marketing for orthodontic practices. So lead generation, in-practice conversion, all of those kind of things. So that really was, I had no background in marketing before that. So the last 6 years has been my exposure to that. But I learned a lot in that 6 years, and I found it really interesting actually. So yeah, traditionally a chartered accountant. That's my background.
Okay.
So I studied accounting in uni, and I've always been in the finance space. But the last 6 years I've kind of overlaid that marketing element to it.
And what did it teach you about the relationship between marketing and finance?
I mean, that's a good question.
In a nutshell,
In a nutshell, I'd say that there's a lot of misalignment between the two.
Okay.
I think because marketing talks about like impressions, it talks about engagement, it talks about those kind of things, whereas finance is very much about the numbers, right? Finance is very much about margins and those kind of things, the bottom line.
Yeah.
And there's just not that ability to communicate the two. They're very
Yeah.
distinct parts of a business, and they're often not aligned, which
Yeah.
is what I found.
Very different personalities.
Yeah.
They would not be in the same group at school, shall we say.
Yeah, exactly right.
But how, there's a way to make them make friends.
Yeah. It's like it's a good analogy they're using, because when you get those group assignments and you put people together just randomly,
Yeah.
it's like you've got to force them together and force them to have a think about it. And I think that's really important. Like businesses that are very successful need to have both elements working really well. That's just understanding how they can communicate with each other. At the end of the day, often the outcome is the same. They both want the same outcome. Like they both want business growth. They both want business development. It's just then, well, how do we talk to each other, and how do we make it simple for the other hand to understand what we're trying to do here?
And it's not because I did a flow chart the other day of how my business starts at marketing, goes through the sales process, goes through operations, and then goes down into finance.
Yeah.
And down into the profit account, hopefully, at the end. So in that kind of diagram that I did, it leads with marketing.
Yeah.
But it's not quite true. They inform each other and work together, and they're kind of working together throughout the whole system.
Yeah.
Where did you start in finance in that kind of, you said you're an accountant, so you're kind of working on that sort of back end of things of like, okay, they've spent this money and they've done this service. And then how have you kind of inserted yourself sort of more, okay, now I need to talk to marketing and get better practice going?
Yeah. I think it comes. Yeah. Look, I think it comes down at the end of the day to perspective and understanding different people's perspective. So you just said you start with marketing, and a lot of people do that as a natural sort of background because you understand it, you're comfortable with it. And I think those types that are more familiar and comfortable with marketing or creative elements will look at it that way. Well, we've got to start here because this naturally drives this and this naturally drives that, and that leads to the end outcome. But for people that are business owners or finance backgrounds or perspectives, I think that when I first started, I naturally looked at it in a different way. I naturally looked at the bottom line as a starting point, and then, well, how are we going to get here? And things were either revenue drivers or cost drivers. And a lot of time marketing and advertising, those things are seen as a cost. They're a cost of business.
Hmm.
So you don't necessarily see it as you start here and you end up here. You kind of see it as, well, we're starting here, and that's an input. That's a cost input. So it's very different. So it's only the last 6 years where I've been on the marketing side of things where I've understood that there is a tangible relationship between the two, and you need to understand both elements of it. And that's why I say the communication and that alignment piece is so important.
Hmm.
And look, I'm very thankful for having been in that space, because I probably wouldn't have appreciated and understood how much it impacts a business until I did that.
Hmm.
Mm.
And so you talk about revenue and cost drivers. Is that a good place to start
Yeah.
in the comms between?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's different elements to it, right?
What do they mean? What is a cost driver? What's a revenue driver?
Well, I mean, a lot of people will look at marketing just as a cost line. You spend X amount on marketing, on services, on engagement. It's a cost line. And there isn't necessarily in a lot of businesses. So I'm going to sort of frame this by saying my experience and my context is a lot with small businesses, SME businesses. So very different for corporate, large businesses that have the sophistication and teams behind them, and they look at different elements. For a small business owner, ultimately, one, if you're looking at your financials and you understand your bottom line, you're looking at that and you want that to be great. And a lot of businesses don't even do that. They just have a feel. They're like, it just doesn't feel right. We don't feel like we're getting much clients in, and we don't feel like we're growing. And the first thing that they think about is, well, my marketing's not working, or I'm not getting enough leads in the door, or I'm not doing that. And that also comes down to that communication and relationship piece, because they look at it as, I'm spending money on marketing, I should be growing.
Yeah.
And it's not always about that. It's, there's different elements of marketing, and you really need to distinguish how you look at it to be successful, and really understand that there's elements of marketing that you can invest in and you can pay money towards that should generate you leads in the short term. But there's different elements of marketing that you should be thinking about more as a capital investment, a longer term brand awareness. And if you're not willing to do that, don't do it. But you need to understand the distinction in between the two. I think it's very important, particularly for small business owners.
So they in marketing they call that the long and the short of it.
Yeah.
Where the short marketing, you can spend money on Google ads or whatever, and like you say, you might get leads, but you turn that tap on by paying for it. Whereas the long, just to sort of expand on what Sunil's been saying, is the brand building, is the shortcut. So like McDonald's has spent a lot of money on that big M over 60 years, and now that's a shortcut of, you walk past it and you're like, do I want a burger?
Yeah.
And that's because they spent 60 years making that M that question in your head of, do I want a burger? So that is, they don't need Google ads that much anymore, because they've just got this symbol that does the job for them.
Yeah.
So do you pay someone else to give you some leads, but as soon as you turn that tap off, it turns off? Or do you invest in something that's going to take ages, 60 years in the case of McDonald's, to build, or not? So those are the costs of marketing, and it's very hard to
quantify that.
To quantify it, and I mean, what is your kind of like, when you sort of started to understand that, what was your finance part of your brain thinking of, how, because marketing is really hard to justify an ROI. It's hard to measure, whereas finance is like spreadsheet of every single data point.
And this is what I was talking about at the start. It's that alignment. It's just getting the alignment and the communication right. So it's explaining in simple terms to a practice owner who might not appreciate it what is in the intended outcome of these aspects. So, sitting down and saying to someone who owns a business, look, here are the elements of your marketing. What suits you? Firstly, okay, let's take even a further step back, is understanding, it's the relationship, understanding the brand elements, what's important to that person. So, let's just assume that that's all understood. That's really important too. And, we can talk a little bit more about that. But then once you've sort of gone past that layer, is then explaining, okay, the short, let's invest in your Google ads, and you can measure that by cost per click, all of those kind of stuff. They're tangible metrics that you can measure. You're paying X amount for every lead that you're getting, and you can track them through, and you can, help them with their conversion. You can understand all of that kind of stuff. They're tangible metrics that, finance likes and can sort of agree and understand. It's the communication piece, making it simple for people. You're paying so much for every lead that you get, and then you're converting, at 50%. This is how much it's costing you per acquisition. Very tangible. But then on the other side, it's, and now you've got the intangible aspects of marketing. It's the capital investment. This is what you're putting into your brand awareness, and your longer term philosophy towards getting to that end where people hopefully think about your brand and think and associate it in a certain way. That's not as tangible, but you can still measure success, and you can still talk about it by things like, impressions, how many people you have following you on social media, if you've got targets for all of those kind of, there's intangible metrics you can use as well, but people don't, one, think about it clearly, or two, particularly when things are challenging, put enough value on those metrics. They don't place value on engagement as much as they probably should. And from a traditional finance perspective, it's also not seen that way because it doesn't contribute to the bottom line. But more and more so, you have to be aware of those measures, and you have to have set tangible metrics to monitor that, and you have to be aligned with that.
So where do we start? Where do we see these metrics? Are they in our accounting software? Are they what are some go-to places to try and pick some out? Because you spend money,
Yeah,
money comes in.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
How do we start labeling this, siphoning things off, and understanding the bigger picture?
Yeah, I mean, often it's not in accounting software. It should be in your reporting. So, if you've got a relationship with an accountant or advisor, certainly I do it for my clients. I try and understand um, their strategy. Where do they want to get to, and how are we going to get them there? And often, a lot of it is associated with growth, and underpinning that is your marketing strategy and your advertising strategy. And having worked closely with the invisible orthodontist, I know they do a lot of this stuff too, is that then we sit down and think, okay, if you want, let's call it 10% growth this year. What does that mean from a leads conversions perspective, from an engagement perspective? What are the metrics that we're looking at? And then making sure that you're monitoring and aware of those numbers on a monthly basis. So they might not come out at you from your accounting software, but your advisor and your accountant can easily design a dashboard or a reporting template that they should be sending you every month that says, this is where we're at this month with those metrics. And those metrics were initially designed to help you achieve your goal. So you should be monitoring those every month.
Interesting. And I liken the business journey to climbing up a mountain, right? So you're going to be at different stages. If you're near the bottom of the mountain, you're a small business, maybe you're just DIYing a lot of it. But to sort of listen to this conversation, if you're a small business, very small business, to sort of have some inkling of what you should be aspiring to in terms of how you separate things, what you're looking for, or
Yeah.
whatever. But I think we're talking about a very specific kind of moment in business where you possibly do need to look at getting a fractional CFO, or at least have a solid accounting team
Yeah.
behind you to help you with these things.
Yeah.
It's because again, it's having a diverse group of friends helping you out.
Yeah, look, I mean, obviously I agree given my business model, but yeah, no, look, even putting that aside, I've always thought that having a set of advisors around you that you trust, that can help you, is just it should be an absolute no-brainer. It should be essential to everybody running a business. A lot of businesses still run their business with very limited idea on the financial side of things. And in the current environment, if you think about the last 12, 18 months and probably for the next, 6 to 12 months, it's challenging. Like running a business is challenging. It's getting tougher. There's more competition. There's a lot more you need to think about. Marketing is one aspect of that. There's AI, there's all these elements. How do you measure how do you measure success in all of that? How do you know what to do? Having an outsourced CFO that can help you translate that to metrics and numbers and what it means for you personally, and also just be a sounding board, is very important. And it might not be. It might be other people. It might be a mentor or a leadership sort of person that you can lean on, someone that's been there and done that before. But having an external perspective and external support network is essential to running a business these days. I firmly believe that. And particularly knowing your numbers, having a clear plan towards that, and monitoring it regularly, and someone that can explain to you in simple terms it's relevant to your business. It just takes away a lot of stress, gives you more confidence to make decisions. That's certainly what I aim to do, and I think it's invaluable.
But then also getting your finance team in-house, outsourced, wherever they are, in the boardroom with your marketing team.
Yeah.
And understanding the strategy together. Because it's very hard without that context.
Yeah.
To know.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you think of anything where you haven't had the context of marketing that has hindered your job, or you found something out about somebody's marketing that if you'd known 6 months ago, your job would have been easier, or you would have been able to give better advice?
Yeah, I mean, it's always useful to understand what you're trying to get out of it. I think it's more about refinement. I mean, where there's issues is usually on a cash flow perspective. If you're spending more than you actually have and you're not sort of getting anything in for it, and all of a sudden you're sort of being asked, well, where's all that money going for? How are we going to pay for this? Or how are we going to do that? And you're sort of not involved in the conversation at the start. That's pretty common, actually. But it's more about the planning. It's more about sitting down at the start and saying, okay, here's our goals. Here's how we're intending to get to them. And then trying to figure out what a relative amount of investment is going to be and whether that fits in with the business objective or not. Because you can have lofty ambitions and goals that require a lot of investment or spending, and sometimes they don't quite align with what you might be getting out of the business. It's great to have those sort of tangibles and targets, but having a person that sort of understands the aspects of the finance and the business to sit down with at the start and say, okay, this is fantastic, but we may only have X amount to invest. Maybe let's think about other things that are going to get us there. So it's just sort of cutting up the pie in different ways.
Yeah. And it's not just money. There's other resources that you could be.
It's time. It's energy.
You could be overspending in.
Yeah. It's all of those kind of things. And they couldn't be, it could be that they're just not delivering a return that's appropriate. So over time, you want to make sure that you're monitoring those and that you're understanding them. And if they're not working, people often see them as a failure. I'd never look at anything in business as black or white. Right? Everything's a learning experience.
Yeah.
It's adjusting. It's okay. You set out with every good intention to have this project going on or this campaign going on. Sometimes it hasn't worked. So let's adjust it. There's elements of that did work. So let's try focusing a little bit more on this or that and just adjusting along the way. But having the data and the insight along the way is so important, rather than waiting for the end and just scrapping it or not, taking the best parts out of it.
And it's often easy to point your finger at marketing as the source of why you're not earning enough.
Yeah.
And it's not always the culprit. Do you think? What are sort of some key culprits of eating at your cash, your profit?
Yeah, marketing's often the first thing that's cut in a business, particularly when you're not performing as well as you should be, or you're not making as much money as you wanted to. The first thing that goes is marketing. It so often happens, and usually it shouldn't be. It's unfairly blamed, and it comes back to that communication piece. It's, well, you haven't been measuring it appropriately, you haven't had the right expectations on it, and there's lots of other things that you can be doing. There's so many instances in history, and even recent history, where businesses have in tough times invested more, but invested in the right way with the right measures that they're looking at, and over the long term that pays off, because particularly, again, if you look back over the last 12, 24 months, where times have been challenging for businesses on the back of COVID and all the money that's gone into the economy and everything that's happened as a result of that, the downturn, a lot of businesses would have stopped their marketing because they just wouldn't have been able to afford it, and it's been challenging. The businesses that continued in some way or shape or form when things start picking up, which they already have, this interest rate cut cycle has been a lot shallower than a lot of people thought, and there's talk now about next year potentially increasing interest rates, which means things are looking, people are more positive, people are spending more, and I'd be really curious to see what happens this Christmas period, because that's often an indicator of where consumer confidence is.
Yeah.
And if that sort of is where people expect it to be, it points to next year being a more positive year, and the people that have sort of started investing throughout the course of this year, they'll be better placed to pick up on that as they head into next year, whereas everyone that's sort of cut back is starting from scratch. It takes a while to generate awareness and brand. It's not like you turn tap on and off instantly. It takes a while to establish those kind of things. So
all right, so we've touched on internal processes to measure what you're doing, trying to find the leaks, the possibilities, the opportunities, the threats. And then you've just mentioned a few external forces, especially indicators and what they mean. So I know there's a lot of different types of indicators. Have you got some favorites that are a bit wild?
yeah, I like looking at consumer confidence scores and surveys. I think that particularly for industries that I am often involved in, says a lot.
So say it again. It was
Consumer confidence.
consumer
scores.
confidence.
Yeah, so that's
So how do they measure consumer confidence?
well, usually it's surveys. There's a couple of pretty good ones. There's the Westpac Institute one. They do monthly surveys. There's another couple that I monitor quite regularly. And basically what they do is every month they go out to, depending on survey, a pretty decent group, thousands of consumers, and they ask them basic questions like, how are you feeling this month versus last month? How likely are you to spend? How do you feel about next year? Those basic consumer questions. Are you going to be spending more? And try and gauge a sentiment of how consumers are feeling. And then they give them a score. And the Westpac Institute one is an interesting one because the base score is 100, which means consumers are very neutral. Anything below 100 is slightly negative, and anything over 100 is positive. And for something like close to 4 years, it's been a negative consumer confidence score, which means consumers have been cautious, very wary. And when that happens, there's a couple of interesting trends in Australia. Usually savings rates go up because Australians are very risk averse, which you wouldn't think, but they are. They save more money when they think times are going to be tough.
Okay.
So you combine consumer confidence scores with savings rates, and that gives you a pretty good idea what people are thinking into the future. And consumer confidence translates to what are they going to spend.
Yeah.
And obviously that translates to the whole economy and the whole business environment. Of late, consumer confidence scores have been rising. So the Westpac Institute one, which I talked about, they had 4 years of negative consumer confidence scores, which is the longest period of negativity since they started that surveys in the 70s.
Okay.
So there's been a constant just uncertainty since
in the last 4 years in
Yeah.
Australia.
And that probably, if you think about that naturally, probably not surprising, right?
It's felt.
Yeah. It's just
I don't know if that's
uncertainty.
common with everyone who runs a business or is in a business, but
Well, I think so. Like, I mean, everyone I've talked to is just this constant uncertainty. What's going to happen, and it's not only because of the pandemic and everything that's happened. It's because of global uncertainty. There's a lot of political uncertainty.
Yeah.
There's a lot of macroeconomic uncertainty with global wars and conflict, and there's just a lot of political division at the moment. All those kind of things that have impacted a consumer's ability to have certainty on what's going to happen, and naturally that translates to, well, what do I do here? But of late, in the last few months, we've seen a lot more positive trajectory on those kind of things. So savings rates are starting to drop, which means people in Australia are happier to dip into their savings to start spending for things, which means they aren't seeing next year as negatively as they have been in the past. And those consumer confidence scores are increasing. People are saying they're going to spend more next year. They're more comfortable doing things. So that bodes well. There's always things that could throw a grenade in there and,
yeah, of
just
course,
derail that.
yeah.
But
Like a pandemic.
yeah, or a tariff war or something like that.
Yeah.
But signs are positive for next year.
That's amazing. That's very good.
Don't hold me to it. But
the Economist. I love that. Talking about like your group of diverse friends. So we've got marketing and we've got finance, but you're also sort of talking about the researchers and the analysts and the psychologists as well. Like everyone's part of this. Everyone's contributing to this wider picture of what the hell do I do? What's my strategy for the next year, 5 years?
Yeah, I think it's always, it's always been, I think you got to have an interest in it. It's always been an interest of mine, just reading Financial Review and things like that, just understanding what potentially is going to happen. I think I've always done that from when I spent a lot of my career at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and we used to read a lot of the business elements, just to get an understanding of, okay, well, where are the opportunities here? And I think as a business owner, you need to be aware of that. And a lot of people are. They do sort of try and look into the crystal ball a little bit. I naturally do that just out of interest. And, I have to understand where I think things are going to for my clients' sake. So, because I need to be able to speak to them and say, well, this is potentially what's going to happen. Have you thought about this? And does that fit into your strategic plans or not?
Yeah. All right. So consumer confidence is good.
Improving.
What is some things business owners can think about in that scenario versus when things are bad?
Well,
or declining, let's say. It's a better word. Yeah.
Well, I think the fundamental thing is that for businesses that are in discretionary spend space, consumers are going to be more willing to spend on items as we move into the next year, assuming that all the trends all the indicators are accurate. So that means that it's the right time to invest in trying to engage with that consumer, making sure they're aware of your brand and what it does, and that you're actually, out there in front of them, because it's more likelihood now that they're going to be engaging and spending. So if you haven't done that, you really should have started by now, and have a think about your marketing, advertising strategy, how you're going to get in front of the consumer a bit more. And the other thing is, this time of the year, a lot of people in Australia, they kind of just naturally, looking forward to a break at the end of the year, and they just shut down a little bit. But before you know it, it's going to be February. So do your planning. Have your strategy in place for early next year in January. What are you doing? If you don't have campaigns and things in mind already, it's going to be March, April before you start getting any sort of engagement, and that's the quarter of the year done.
Or any momentum and
you want to start the year strong. You don't want to be chasing your tail. So planning for next year should have already started.
Sure. That's interesting because we do work in cycles and seasons. What are some things that you should do throughout the year? So you got end of financial year, big break in January, and obviously you're going to have industry specific things and location specific things going on. But sort of generally with the financial year, what are kind of some cycles of business or cycles of consumer spending that you can think of?
Yeah.
There's a lot in there.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, I guess it depends on what industry you're going to be in. Obviously, retail is very different. You look at festive periods as good periods for yourself. I know you do a lot in real estate. That's very different as well. People will start thinking about putting the house on the market and things like that come January. Like traditionally, March, April are good times for that, as is the spring in October, September. So it's very different by different industry. But generally, I think January is a good time for consumer engagement, for brand awareness, and making sure you're out in front of there. People are familiar with yourselves, because even if people are not engaging or they're not aware, they're a different frame of mind. And come February, there's often a lot of activity, or even January. Like people are trying to do a lot of things while they're a bit freer, a bit more downtime in Australia.
They got the chance to ruminate as they
do.
tape in a few ads.
Yeah, they're a bit more relaxed in Australia. It's kind of this like, where it used to be like this. I think it's to a large extent, it still is. It's that period between sort of Melbourne Cup, first week of November, to Australia Day. It's a bit more of a, not relaxed, but it's people sort of sometimes take their foot off the pedal a little bit. It's a bit of a rest and
it's more thinking, less doing, maybe.
Yeah,
should be.
It should be. Yeah, and it often is. It's people aren't going pedal to the metal. They're sort of thinking about breaks and holidays and school. If you've got kids, school holidays and all that kind of stuff. It's a couple of month period where it's a bit more relaxed, and people are in a different mindset. So that's just worth thinking about as well.
What about end of financial year? What's the sort of sentiment around there in times of business?
End of financial year is often a bit different. Like it's again, it depends on what you think about, but there's ways that you can be optimizing your accounts and making sure that you're preparing for the next year. Businesses plan in different ways. Some of them plan by financial year, targets in that respect, a lot of them. Some of them have calendar year targets, so January to December. So it just depends on what your cycle is. There's no specific, you have to do this at the end of the financial year and these are the opportunities versus the calendar year. It's all individual. It depends on your business and how you look at it and what period you want to be tracking yourself over. Financial year, there's elements where you can optimize your accounts, let's say it, but your accountant's probably better at helping you do that than I am.
And are there any other what would we call them, indexes that you enjoy? Because I'm sure it was you who was telling me about the McDonald's burger index.
Yeah.
And so there must be just so many random
Big Mac index.
Yeah, what's the Big Mac index? That's hilarious.
The Big Mac index, it's kind of like the cost of the Big Mac in every market, and it kind of gives you a feel of what that market is in terms of the country and the region, of how expensive it is in that region. Your Big Mac might, I don't even know what a Big Mac costs these days, but $10 or maybe even more. But if you're in America, it might cost you $12, and if you're in the UK, £8 or whatever it is. It sort of benchmarks the cost of living in different countries, and also as a measure of inflation, how much a Big Mac costs now versus 10, 20 years ago. It's just interesting. It's because there's not many brands, maybe Coca-Cola, that you can do that with. McDonald's, the Big Mac, and Coca-Cola are two that you can actually have a look at. Well, how much is the cost of these things in different markets around the world?
And then are there others that you enjoy, indexes?
That's a completely random one. That's just interesting. But you mean sort of specific in like Australian market?
I just don't know much. I don't know many of them, and like the ones that you've brought up so far, the consumer confidence and the Big Mac, just seem fascinating. And like,
Yeah.
it's not something I've really considered before,
Yeah.
but definitely in this sort of stage of my career is something that I should.
Yeah.
So I'm just fascinated. Like, you know, where can I look to be amused, like the Big Mac index,
Yeah.
and where can I look for some solid data that's gonna help?
Yeah. I often, but like a lot of my research comes from different company sites and also the Reserve Bank site. There's a lot of institute sites, the economics site that has a lot of these benchmarks. It has, the cash rate, which is the current RBA interest rate. It has consumer trends, spending trends, inflation trends. It has a lot of data on there.
Yeah.
The Institute of Data, and then you've got accounting firms that do a lot of analysis that provide publications quite regularly. The likes of Deloitte Economics has great data. PwC has some. All those big accounting firms provide their data. The banks provide a lot of that data. Commonwealth Bank do a great survey where they analyze the spending patterns of thousands and thousands of consumers using the credit card data that they have. So what are people spending their money on, in what demographic, in what age groups? Combank does that one. Westpac, ANZ, they've got millions and millions of consumers, and they've got access to all this data, confidentially, obviously, but they publish a lot of really good stats and data. And I just, subscribe to the publications
Yeah.
so that I'm getting them regularly, and that I'm reviewing them, and that, even if they come in, I'm just flicking through them quickly just for headlines, and if they're more interesting, then I might get into them a little bit more. So it's just a matter of finding the right ones. I'd suggest for people that are looking at it, look at those accounting firms and the banks and also the RBA, and you can get a lot of good data that way.
Okay. And then
Universities as well, sorry, I should add to that.
Okay, and then bring all of this, and economists and
Yeah.
all the clever people, bring all this back to the board with your marketing and your ops or whoever you need, and that data is going to inform pricing strategy, promotion strategy,
Yeah. Yeah.
all of those things.
Yeah, well, I think it's you're kind of operating in a bit of a bubble if you're not aware of what the economy is doing and what businesses signs are telling you. You need to start with a fundamental understanding of what are all these indicators saying to get. It's never 100% accurate. You're still making a best guess here. But understanding all of those elements gives you a much better idea of what, say, the next 12 months is going to hold, versus not understanding those elements, because then you're just completely having a stab in the dark. And if your strategy is not aligned to that, you're going to suffer. And I used to do this a lot. I used to, say to do a regular update, economic update to the orthodontist to say, next year is going to be challenging. Next year is going to be challenging. There's no doubt about that. There's a 95% chance it's going to be challenging. Consumers are going to be looking to spend more. They're going to be shopping around more. They're going to be, thinking about it more. You really need to work on your sharpening your conversion once you get them in the door, because they're going to be harder once they step out of that door. And you also need to work on having that empathy, that they're taking the time, because it's a big investment for them. You need to have that empathy, and you need to be looking at different elements of your business as well, perhaps really focus on the cost side of your business as opposed to just freely spending when things are going well, because it's going to be sharper. That's what I was saying to orthodontic practices, 2 years ago and up until now. Now it's more, okay, how are you going to be preparing yourself for growth? Because we're coming out of that cycle now. How are you preparing yourself for that? What are you going to be spending in? Is your business ready for it? What's the patient journey look like? Because now there's different elements. There's competition. There's all of those kind of things. So what are you doing to sharpen your business and make it stand out from the crowd?
Yeah. And do you have history with what do you call it? Liquidation? No.
Yes, restructuring. Yeah,
Restructure,
insolvency.
insolvency. So what is your experience with insolvency taught you about the relationship between finance and marketing?
Yeah, I mean, insolvency is a very interesting space. Like, you learn a lot about businesses, and you're running businesses that have failed for several reasons. But a lot of people just aren't looking at the numbers closely. They just aren't. They're making decisions based on feel or emotion, or where they want to go without any supporting data, and that's what gets them into trouble. They're overstretching themselves. They're too heavily burdened in debt. There's relationship issues with shareholders. They're fundamentally the causes of a business breaking down. It's not often, I mean, tough economies and business environments. Yeah, they obviously contribute, but if you understand all that and you're prepared for it, you wouldn't put yourself in that position where
you'd be wearing the right coat for the right weather.
Yeah, and it's the businesses that just aren't prepared for that, that often find themselves in trouble.
Yeah, okay.
Hmm.
And are there sort of more specific tales of caution in that, if what is one thing a business can do just to expand their knowledge of the numbers that little bit? What are the essentials of what you should be looking at?
Well, I think first and foremost, you need to be looking at the right set of numbers and metrics for your business, and they need to be very specific. And I am an advocate of the rule of sort of 3 to 5, or at most 7. Don't look at more than 3 to 5 to at most 7 things in your business.
Okay.
The key metrics and data that are relevant to you, what's most important to you, those need to be formed based on your overall strategy. And that strategy might be, we want to grow revenue, we want to improve our margin, we want to grow our customer base. There's different sort of elements. So it should be one overarching strategy, and then you should have 5 to 7 sort of key elements that are the most important factors in you achieving that strategy, and looking at those regularly. People don't look at them regularly. They may have a goal, but they don't measure it. They're just kind of feeling their way towards it. If you get the right reporting, you've got the right metrics that you're focusing every month, it doesn't mean that you need to change your strategy every month. It just means that you understand whether or not you're making the right progress or not. It's just about, a lot of this kind of stuff, it's not rocket science. It's just about simplicity, consistency, and that's really about it. It's just those two elements in themselves, keeping things simple and tangible so you understand them. People try and often over-engineer benchmarks and metrics, and it's not necessary. It's just, well, what's the base here that is relevant to you? Have that as the base and measure against that, and do it consistently. Are you improving or not? And over time, the trend obviously is you want to see the trend going up. You could have months where you're going down and all of those kind of things, but it's just finding the simple metrics and just measuring them consistently.
And the more you look at those metrics, the more you'll understand the forces behind them.
Exactly. And over time, you'll change your behaviors because you'll get a better understanding of the drivers of your business, those fundamental underlying drivers of your business, whatever they are. And they're very different for different businesses. And then, once you've got that, it's an innate understanding, and your behaviors, you'll find that they change.
Because no one's born a brilliant business person. So it's really interesting to have the experts come in and give you these tools to expand your mind, expand your understanding of what is happening.
Yeah.
And that's a really great way of doing it.
Yeah.
So if someone wants to connect with you and help understand those 3 to 7
Yeah.
key metrics, how can they get in touch?
Yeah, anytime. I love having a chat to people, in any sort of way, shape, or form. So email me, Sunil, SUNIL, at theintegratedexec.com. And I'm happy to have a chat or reach out via LinkedIn, or whatever it may be. And I'm happy to have a chat.
And what are your hopes and dreams? Well, I say hopes and dreams. What are your stats and data for 2026? Like, so we got a better consumer confidence.
Yeah, I think next year is going to be a better year for a lot of businesses. So, well, fingers crossed that's true.
It's nice to hear something optimistic. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think it's going to be a better year for a lot of businesses. We've had the benefit of a few interest rate cuts now, which particularly for the younger demographic bodes well. And then you've got the baby boomers who, don't really get impacted by interest rate changes because they've already made their money and don't have mortgages, but they get the benefit of higher interest rate savings now, hopefully, or they have had the benefit, so they're still spending. So I think next year is going to be a positive year for a lot of businesses, and fingers crossed that holds true.
So it's a good time to have a good hard look at your finances and your marketing.
Yeah.
And make sure you're going to wear the right coat next year.
It's a good time to start thinking about how you invest in growth. And, I don't say that lightly. As I've said before, think about it, but make sure you're measuring it appropriately. But yeah, I think it's as good a time than it is to start thinking about how you can start growing your business if you haven't seen that over the last few years.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sunil. I really enjoyed talking to you about this, and I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks.
Pleasure. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.